following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back after a long hiatus. St. Louis Cardinal Baseball. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And the man, the myth, the legend is here. He's the host, Gene Hutmaker, Cardinal fan from way back, an expert, a maven, on a lot of things, not just the Cardinals. You're a sports collector. You're an aficionado of the Hall of Fame. You have very strong opinions on baseball, as most of our podcasters do on this network, without being opinionated. And it makes a difference. You hear a lot of ranters who aren't open to learning on all these sports shows. We have a different style. We may have differences of opinion, but we appreciate each other's opinions and right to have them, and we learn from each other. And that's the way it is network-wise. That's the way it is with Gene. And a regular on the show will be Al Blumpkin, our resident Sabre superstar. I would say you hate to use the term. In a sense, you're like Rain Man. There's nothing.
No, I mean I don't like that at all.
No, well, you're.
I remember all this stuff, but I'm not an idiot savant by any means.
Oh, okay. No, certainly
okay.
not that.
And that's the connotation it brings.
Oh, okay.
Because I saw this originally when it came out with a friend of mine, and when he started when Dustin Hoffman started going through his Cincinnati Reds in the movie, he and I turned to each other and said, "Ron Liebman."
Okay.
That's Liebman.
Now there's a name.
Yeah, there's an idiot savant. Okay.
Hasn't come into my head.
Yeah.
In a long time. He was a guest once or twice, and
yeah.
It just seems like there was no connection other than
no, there isn't.
Yeah, that was my way of looking at it. I certainly appreciate his knowledge. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Can't deny that. You guys have the knowledge without being that way. I was just looking for a word that would describe it, Alan. You, on 3 different shows on this network, sit in on panels and amaze your fellow panelites with your recall.
I tell you, I can recall what happened in a ball game 60 years ago, but where I put something 2 hours ago, I can't remember.
Okay.
It's one of those things.
We're all in our 70s.
Yeah, and I can't. As I said the last time we did with George, I can remember players from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. I see some of these names when I look at the box score of the current games that I don't know half the names on certain teams.
All right. Well, we've got Gene Hutmaker, who keeps up in terms of Cardinal baseball. And what I admire about you, Gene, is that your opinions, you are so old school, you have so many great opinions, but you listen and don't get angry when we go back and forth as to old school versus new school, what is old school. You're terrific on these airwaves. Appreciate having you, my friend.
Well, I try and be realistic, and like as far as with the new Sabermatics and analytics, whatever you want to call them, I used to use back in the 80s. I used whip and stuff like that, and OPS, but I never go for this. I never go for anything that are adjusted stats. I take a look at the stats, and the only ballpark that I would consider where you have to penalize the player, so to speak, would be Colorado, with Larry Walker being a .380 hitter in Coors and .278 on the road. But
true. And then it comes into consideration with not Larry Walker so much.
Todd Helton.
Yes.
Because he played his whole career there.
Well, he was 287 on the road, which is not too bad.
Well, the Red Sox in the old days used to have incredible home road splits. Fred Lynn threw away a Hall of Fame career by leaving them.
Yes.
Jason Bay was like with the worst $1 million. He went to the Mets, and where he was a 35 homer, 120 RBI guy in Fenway. He went to the Mets for $1 million more.
There is no name that one can mention to a Met fan like myself than Jason Bay for someone who exemplifies how a team takes a loss on a free agent signing, and for the next 10 years they won't go out on a limb unless they're backed up against it. And the Will Ponzis have failed. Sometimes you got to take a chance. Bay was a horrible signing.
There was one of the baseball sites of mine. The guy asked to list who you thought was the worst free agent signing by the Mets. I put down Bay. There was Bobby Bonilla and a few other, types like that. Mo Vaughn. I put down Jason Bay. Yeah.
Mo Vaughn from Seton Hall.
Yeah. Robbie Alomar, who was done by the time they picked him up.
Well, Alomar had a Hall of Fame year the year before, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And the Mets got him, and it just fell off the table.
Well, that's
Citi Field is not exactly
just a microcosm of what it is to be a Met fan.
Yes, Citi Field is not exactly a hitter's ballpark.
No question about
it. And neither was Shea, for that matter. No.
Yeah, and the Mets when they go well, always live and die by their pitching. Vis-a-vis 69.
Yeah.
86, they had great hitting, but let's not forget they had great pitching too. But then we had those great years. You could say 4 or 5 of them. I'll include 73 being a great year. They
were just 3 games over 500 that year. They won because the division was terrible.
It was a tough division.
It was a terrible division.
Well, you had to play St. Louis. You
had to play the Pirates, who had lost Clemente in the plane crash, and Blast couldn't get anybody out in 73. And he was finished.
Yeah. Well, they won it. That was my favorite Met team. They were so harangued by injuries and military call-ups early on in that season. And Yogi was about to get fired. I think it was Cashman, the GM, was about to get fired. They had polls in the New York Post as to what day they'll get fired, stuff like that. It was
they can do that for half the teams here, between the basketball and the football teams.
I think 9 NFL teams have better records than the New York teams combined.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then we have records for
the only area that's worse than here is the Bay Area, where you are, Ralph, with the Rays and the 49ers.
They fell off the table. But the good news, bad news is that the Raiders won't be in Oakland very long. They'll be in Las Vegas. Unbelievable how a franchise can leave a city twice. Screw them when they come back, have them take a ballpark and make it into a stadium, a football stadium, and screw it up for baseball, and then take off and leave again.
The Rams, look crazy. They started as the Cleveland Rams in 1937. They moved to Los Angeles after winning the NFL championship in 1945. They moved to L.A. Then in 1994, they moved to St. Louis. And 2 years ago, it's back to L.A.
But I still think one of the worst was the Colts leaving in the middle of the
night in Baltimore, Yeah. And the Browns.
And keeping the name Colts when they went to Indianapolis.
And the Browns also, when the first team went to Baltimore for no good reason, and then they mollified the fans there by putting the expansion team in and keeping the colors,
Keeping the colors,
even though they've been pretty bad since that team was been founded.
Right.
But also, I want to get off football. What do you guys think of the Orioles managerial job still being open?
I couldn't imagine a young manager wanting to make his earn his way in Baltimore at this point. I think they're going to have to go out and get somebody like a Scioscia, Mike Scioscia, for instance, might be a good bet to rebuild that team. That's what I would. First guy that comes to mind, American League guy, is done in California, and Dusty Baker said it. You lose the clubhouse after a while. People get tired of hearing you, whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent. And Scioscia lasted 20 years in California. He still has. He's one of those old-time baseball guys. He'd be a good fit, I think. That's just you asked me, I told you.
But to me, they're challenging their St. Louis Browns, which is where they came from.
Well, they're getting people that just go by the computer now. They're not.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So they're not. It's not really like baseball people that you know. Before it was like former players, and now it's like people that are just push the buttons and figure out what to do.
No, I think that's. I've been a long-time member of SABR, but I've never accepted, as you mentioned earlier, Gene, I've never accepted anything but the WHIP and the OPS.
Those are,
in fact, I'm so bad.
Incredibly definitive stats as to how both a pitcher is doing and hitter is doing, and OPS against is a great stat to analyze pitchers.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, how many more stats does one need to try to determine it? War is, you can't understand it. One can't understand it.
War is Vietnam.
War.
Yeah, war was good for absolutely nothing.
Well, Casey Stengel had everything in the 50s when he would rotate. Woodling and Bauer both played like 130 games, and he was with he had everything in his head and who they can hit, who they can't hit. I mean, I hate the Yankees, but Stengel was a genius at knowing how to platoon. He was like the first really to platoon.
We were saying on another show recently that not only could he do that with an outfield, he did it with an infield, but he managed a pitching staff that included Allie Reynolds, and he got the most out of Reynolds. Somebody gave an outrageous stat of the number of games that were won by the Yankees that year. Reynolds either won or came in relief and did well. Is an unbelievably, not that year, that dynasty, the 49-53 dynasty, was very much dependent on pitching as well as hitting, and Allie Reynolds could start in relief and relieve, and
somebody put up a picture of the three of them yesterday on one of the Yankee sites, and I put down Reynolds and his Yankee career was 131 and 60. I looked all this stuff up on reference. Rashi was 120 and 50 in his turn there. Lopat was 113 and 59.
They were better than the Cleveland Hall of Famers.
Yeah. Yeah, Lopat beat the Indians just by throwing his glove out there.
Yeah. You know what made them great, too, is that they were each pitchers with different styles. So you'd get a series, and you'd face the breaking ball, the junk ball guy in Lopat. You'd face Allie Reynolds, who was probably as fast as these guys today. They didn't have radar guns in those days, but that guy could throw. You'd hear it by the sound of the catcher's mitt meeting the ball, catching the ball. It would just ring out through Yankee Stadium, I remember as a kid. Good memories of the greatest dynasty going. Now, can't we bring this all around to St. Louis? What made you, Gene Hutmaker, a fan? Tell the story of when one of your favorites, Jim Rashi, was traded to St. Louis, or dumped, actually,
yeah.
a salary move by Weiss. Could you explain?
Yeah, well, and they got slaughtered basically for Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi was getting older, and they had Bob Grimm, and Bob Grimm was his replacement, and he came up as a rookie and won 20 games. But he wanted to show, Weiss wanted to show all other Yankees, hey, you get your World Series check and everything, and then you want more, and if you're going to argue with me, I'm going to trade you. No matter how much of a star you are.
Now, Rashi was a very hard bargainer when he was, having his top years. And Weiss didn't like that at all.
Well, Weiss would get 10% of whatever he could save, so.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So he was, yes.
What gets me is that the Yankees in those years had a farm system in the major leagues, Kansas City. And the owner of Kansas City,
Arnold Johnson, yeah.
Arnold Johnson had a piece of the Yankees.
He owned Yankee Stadium.
Oh, was that it?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He owned Yankee Stadium. He owned the Kansas City ballpark also, because Kansas City, before they came into the majors in 1955, was a Yankee farm team for years.
Right.
And he had a lot of business dealings with Del Webb, who was one of the Yankee co-owners at that point.
It was Hank Greenberg who said that it's a lot easier to win when you have your farm team in your league.
Yeah.
Right. I can remember the story, and Alan, if I remember it, Alan remembers it, when the Kansas City got Roger Maris from Cleveland, and the reaction on the Yankee bench and in the clubhouse is, we just got Roger Maris.
Well, the Frank Lane, who made the trade from the Indians standpoint, said he knew he was sending Maris on a one-stop trip to the Yankees, but he wanted the power of what he held for the Indians.
And from the standpoint of the Indians, like in '59, when they really competed, Big Power and Woody Held were integral. Woody Held was solid for a long time.
Lane busted that team up if they finished a close second to the White Sox. He busted that team up in the winter.
Was that the year he traded
it was capped off the day before the regular season opened when he traded Colavito to Detroit for Harvey King. Because Lane couldn't stand anybody who got more publicity than he did.
Yeah, that was a terrific team. I think they had Minnie Minoso,
Jim
Bissell.
But Terry Francona
had a big year.
Francona had a very big year. And Cal McLish won 19 games, and they sent him to the Reds for Johnny Temple, who proved he couldn't hit, and McLish fell totally apart.
Yeah. Hey, here's a name for along a second baseman along those lines. I was going to give Gene Hutmaker, Johnny Blasingame.
Don
Johnny
Blasingame.
Blasingame. He married Walker Cooper's daughter.
Yeah, she was at a Sabre convention, a national convention, a number of years ago. Yeah, I talked with him for a couple of minutes. Yeah.
He was a St. Louis Cardinal for a while.
He started with them.
Right, and went to Cincinnati. I think
he went to the
Giants.
Yeah.
Good ball player, the Blazer. Good memory on that one.
Didn't they get rid of him to make, Gene, didn't they get rid of him to make room for Julian Javier when they got him in the Mizell trade?
I think he might have already been gone.
Yeah.
I remember the Cardinals would, they moved Boyer into the outfield.
Yeah.
They made room for Eddie
1957, the 1 year, yeah.
Actually, Boyer's my guy, and he was probably the second best center fielder in the league.
Yeah, and they traded Alvin Dark at the beginning of '58 for Jim Brosnan, which at that time I could not understand. You know,
okay,
even though Dark was 36 years old.
Every time we talk Boyer on a Cardinal show, I've got to tell you that Kenny Boyer, Cloyd Boyer, Clete Boyer, and 6 other Boyers, if I'm not mistaken, played professional baseball. I think 9 of them played professional. They were all from a little town in Missouri named Alva, Missouri. And I was in the Air Force with a kid. He was young adult, Dave McKinley, who I worked with and was one of the greatest guys. He and his wife, Linda, I was like 20. He was about 22, young married couple. They were so nice to me, a single guy living in California. He was, his mother was the postmistress of Alva, Missouri. And that's where he grew up and where the Boyers lived. A whole bunch of people grew up playing ball right around there, including
Mickey Mantle.
Yeah,
they played against each other back as a youth back in the day, Boyer and Mantle. The thing about Boyer, too, is when they compare him to Santo, a lot of people don't realize it because he wasn't in the majors at the time, but he served 2 years with Uncle Sam, 2 years that would have been spent in the minors.
Yeah, they did that in those days.
Yeah, I mean, like even like when they talk about Carl Furillo, who has like 1,900 hits and a .299 batting average, he before he made the majors, basically he served 3 years in the military, so you could take maybe that's another 500 hits he might have had, and with a 300 average, which should have been probably Hall of Famous for that area, for that time.
And Al Blumkin is thinking Warren Spahn. Am I
right?
No,
Spahn wasn't established when he went in.
No, but
he only pitched a handful of games.
He was 26 when he won his first major league game.
He was 20. Came out in 40. He was 25 when he won his first major league game in 1946.
Okay.
But he was only there for a handful of games. You had guys like Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams who were missing primetime careers. DiMaggio was never the same player after the war as he was before the war, really. I know Harvey Haddix did 2 years in the military before he came up to the Cardinals in 1952.
Yeah, well, because it wasn't like, well, they had the Korean War going on to some degree, but a lot of times, even just serving in the military, since there was no war, a lot of people don't, and if you weren't in the majors yet, they don't. Yeah,
well, Wiley Ford, after his rookie year, went to Fort Monmouth, which is probably near you somewhere for 2 years.
Yeah.
That was his military,
like even Willie Mays. Willie Mays would have probably had like 720.
Yeah, he would have been the first one to break. I did a whole presentation 30 years ago at Saban National on players who lost time to being in the military during the Korean War, whether they were actually out there like Ted Williams or just being drafted. I did a whole thing on that, whole presentation on that 30 years ago at the Saban National Convention.
Like a lot of guys in World War II, they like Williams and DiMaggio, Musial, they all lost time, but in Greenberg they were still Hall of Famers. But a guy like Dom DiMaggio, lost three prime years. Johnny Pesky. Yeah,
Pesky led the league in hits his rookie year, and then when he came back, he led the league in hits a couple of times more. A lot of them lost time, and I speculated back then that the one who was most affected by being in the military in the early 50s was Don Newcomb.
Yeah.
He was very bitter about that. He says, why isn't several contemporaries of his age-wise, why wasn't Robin Robertson? They took him in after 51. He came out 54. He had he missed, say, minimally 30 wins in 52 and 53. That's at a minimum. He came out in 54, had a bad year, and then after Yogi took him over the wall in 56, he started boozing again.
You know, he gets the bad rap of never winning the big games, but how can you give a guy like that the rap when the Dodgers wouldn't have been playing those big games?
He was his World Series record, and I did this. I put this down on some Facebook post of his when somebody congratulated him for winning the Cy Young Award and MVP in 1956. And I said Yogi took care of him, hitting 3 home runs off of him in the World Series. Newcomb's World Series record was 0-4 with an 8.59 ERA.
You know who's also 0-4 in the World Series? Verlander.
Yeah. I didn't know that because he's current. You can't keep up with that stuff.
I mean, he's like 13-7 in postseason.
Yeah.
Something like that, but he's 0-4 in the World Series.
And Newcomb was on the mound when they lost the pennant to the Phillies in 1950. And he was on the mound when most of the Bobby Thompson game.
Did Sisler hit the homer off of him?
So yeah.
He had Russell.
Sisler, he and Roberts both went 10 innings, the full 10 innings.
Okay.
In fact, earlier in September, Newcomb became the last pitcher that wasn't a gimmick that tried to actually pitch both ends of a doubleheader. He was probably shot by then, but
didn't Wilbur Wood pitch?
I was at that. He got bombed in the first game. He went out in the first inning after giving up 8 runs, and then he brought him back in the second game. That, to me, is not legitimate.
Oh, okay. That's the game you were thinking of when you said that.
I was at Yankee Stadium for that.
All right. Well, let's take time out and talk to Gene, someone who does keep up with the current, unlike, for the most part, me and Al. Although Al will surprise one every now and again. You follow your Pirates pretty closely.
Yeah.
And you keep an eye out for especially the National League Central, where St. Louis plays. I want Gene's opinion of the trade that the Cardinals made this week, and then we'll get your opinion, Al. Gene Hutmaker, the deal. What do you say?
Well, Goldschmidt's one of the top players in the game, and he's also. The Cardinals had problems at first base fielding with Carpenter there, and he's also a very good fielder. And Carpenter will likely go back to his more normal position at third base, and that can only really help. Of course, the Cardinals, Molina's up there in age, that kind of a thing. But Bader's a young guy in the outfield, and Ozuna didn't have the year that they expected, although it was decent, 23 homers, and hitting around 280. But with Ozuna in there now, Martinez, they should have a decent now. I just hope that Wainwright can do something back. I know he's getting a lot older, but I'm really hoping that he could do something. If he's, I was hoping he'd make.
Hey, I asked you about what they gave up, and normally, especially in today's day and age, a prospect is a suspect. Let's put it that way.
I didn't even. I think the catcher was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, Molina's probably got like 2 years left. So.
Yeah. Which brings us to a subject that we could cover all night, the amazing Molina brothers. Am I right? Wow.
He's the most amazing of them all. In fact, in 2013, when the National League MVP was Andrew McCutchen, even though I'm a Pirate fan, I thought Molina deserved it over him.
Yeah, but he came in third, too. I think Goldschmidt was second. But I thought, I catch you with the stats that Molina had that year, and the Cardinals being in postseason. And I thought, but it was really chicked, that old word people, it was chicked to vote for a Pirate then. Hurdle got
I told people Before McCutchen was named, I thought Yadier Molina deserved the MVP in that year.
Well, the Pirates had all the.
Well, it was the first time in 20 years, 21 years that they made it to had a winning record. And
all baseball now is getting more top heavy and down heavy, and there's no middle pretty much. It seems like the good teams are getting more.
Well, the National League was fairly balanced. The American League, forget it. You had 3 teams win 100 games. You had 3 teams lose 100 games. And the Orioles were just, it was mind-boggling. I was hoping they'd lose the last game to make it 70 games under 500 because they'd be joining a very exclusive club with that.
Well, the Mets, the Tigers.
Yeah, the Pirates in 1952 were 154-game schedule. They had 42 and 112.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Was that the year that they told Ralph Kiner that we could finish out?
The next year they traded him. Ricky traded him to the Cubs.
What I don't understand about Kiner's argument should be, well, I'm the only reason you get fans.
Well, exactly.
Because somebody did it when I was in Pittsburgh for the convention there. Somebody did a whole presentation on the contentious relationship that Ricky and Kiner had. Because when Ricky came there, he says, he thought Kiner was extremely overrated. He couldn't field, he couldn't run. And he looked, and then Kiner would go over Ricky's head as far as money was concerned because he was tight with the owner. That really pissed Ricky off.
Well, Bing Crosby could always throw some money in too.
Yeah, but the Galbraiths were running the team at the time.
Yeah.
And because there's one time Ricky wanted to give Kiner a very small raise, and Kiner went over Ricky's head, and he got a $75,000 contract, which in those days was a lot of money.
Wasn't Kiner the guy that said home run hitters drive Cadillacs?
Singles hitters drive Fords, and home run hitters drive Cadillacs.
Right.
Well, Ruth once said that if they wanted to pay me to hit singles, I could have hit 600.
Hey,
Ty Cobb said he could hit homers when he wanted to too, and then I think he went out and he hit 3 homers in a game. Ty Cobb.
Yeah.
I posted on the Comfortably Zoned discussion group on Facebook a video that I got off the internet somewhere of Babe Ruth. It is just the best video. You see these shaky videos where you see it, you don't get a realistic view of what his talents were. This guy was a hell of a ball player. I mean, as if, that's a big scoop. But you see him throwing on the sidelines, the looseness of the way he rotates his hips. Amazing video that obviously none of us were alive to see him play. None of us were alive, ironically, to...
We were alive. We were just babies.
Yeah, we're babies, if that. But so if you get a chance, look at this video that I posted.
He had a career pitching record of, I think, 92 and 48 or something like that. And he was a 2-time 20-game winner for the Red Sox. And he also...
He would have won the MVP and Cy Young that in 1916.
Yeah, 1916, he led the league in the ERA also.
Yeah, he would.
I don't want to talk too much about him. On our Sunday show with George Case, we're doing a Babe Ruth kind of a commemorative. The guy was something special. And what impressed me, he was carrying a 44 bat, 44-ounce bat.
Telephone pole.
It was a telephone pole. And if you see the films, he whips that around like a twig in the forest. I mean, like, whoop. You talk about bat speed at 44 with a 44-ounce bat. Incredible. And his stats, the only thing I can say, we don't talk much about stats. they're on this network, they're Gretzky-like. They're so far ahead of his contemporaries at the time. I mean, you see Mickey and Willie, and they're better than most, certainly. But Gretzky, Babe Ruth, few others, Bobby Orr that I could think of, just dominate the game like Babe Ruth did. And
Jimmy Brown of football. Yeah.
Jimmy Brown of football is a great one. Absolutely.
Will Chamberlain in scoring.
Yeah, no question. And when he wanted to, Will Chamberlain, he could pass and play defense.
Yeah, he led the league in assists 1 year. When the Sixers won it, he led the league in assists.
But he had Lucius Jackson, my favorite name in sports. That was a hell of a team.
Hal Greer.
Bobby Jones, I think, was on there.
No, Wally Jones is no, they had Greer in the backcourt. I think Wally Jones, who played Wally Jones, and the other forward was Billy Cunningham. The other forward was Billy Cunningham.
Billy Cunningham. Okay, you're right. Bobby Jones came later.
From Erasmus High School here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the Kangaroo
Exactly.
Kid. Yeah.
Bernie Kersner, my camp director, was the coach of Erasmus all those years. Rest in peace, Bernie. I think of you a lot.
Yeah, getting to baseball cards, I saw Peter Trunk put up old Bowman Dodger cards from the early 50s.
Right.
And Jackie Robinson was never on a Bowman card after 1950. He wasn't on a mainstream card in 1951 at all. And then he was exclusive Topps. So, there was never a Dodger card, a Bowman card on Branch Rickey in 1951.
Oh.
And when you're starting to collect this stuff when you're 8 years old, you don't understand why. Yeah.
Like I usually
don't understand the difference between Bowman
and Topps.
Well, first card
Gene, I don't know if you got involved with this, but in 54 and 55, when there was no Mickey Mantle Topps cards, and kids like us didn't know any better, we spent a lot of nickels and dimes looking for Topps.
Yeah.
Mantle cards from those years that didn't exist.
I had Mantle. I was more of a Bowman collector.
Yeah, I like the designs. I'm trying to accumulate 54s. The big ones I have all on reprint because I can't afford the real ones.
Well, I have the 54 Bowman with Ted Williams card.
With the Ted Williams card.
Yeah,
I have a reprint.
They pulled the Ted Williams and they replaced it with Pearsall.
Yeah.
Same exact photo. So the two number of Pearsalls, the same number as Williams.
Yeah.
Same pose.
Because Topps had Williams exclusively then, and what goes around comes around. When Topps reprinted their 1954 set in 1995, I think, whatever year it was, in the 90s, they had to go up a deck to get the two Williams cards from that set reprinted because, and I'm sure Upper Deck held the Topps up for a bundle, so they reprinted those, and they threw in a facsimile 54 Mantle. And also, Gene, there are facsimile cards of Musial and Topps for the years.
I know they're missing.
It's missing. Yeah, they're cheap. They're fairly cheap.
Yeah, but the whole thing with that, like I never understood that because, like they said, the compensation and all that. And I understand if they're having a war and he didn't want to get involved, but once like in '56 he should have probably had one. I mean, the money he was making was so great compared to everybody else. I don't think he needed the money.
He was on a Red Heart in 1954.
Yeah,
they put out 33 cards, and he was on one of them. But if you really want the facsimiles, they're out there.
Yeah, well, I have just about every one of Musial's cards, including the Royal Dessert and the Wheaties and Red Heart.
Well, I know he was on Bowman in 48 and 49, and then wasn't on them in 50 or 51, and came back to 52 and 53. Yeah. And when Topps signed Ted Williams from 1954 to 1958, they gave him the whopping sum of $400 a year.
Well, maybe Musial wanted that.
Yeah.
Maybe
but that was then what they give the players in those days was like $100 and a set of cards, some of which turned out to be very valuable if they saved them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Maury Wills problem was Maury Wills wasn't on the tops for a long time because he was a minor leaguer or whatever, or going to be, and they didn't take him. His first card is actually the Flair 63.
Yeah, he was on a 67 Topps cars, a Pirate. That was his first Topps card.
I can tell you how that Maury Wills experience changed my life. How about that? I read a book, the baseball card flipping.
Yeah, I have that. I've read that a number of times, yeah.
Well, if you look at the beginning of the book, there's a foreword by my future boss.
Cy Berger?
Cy Berger. And writes in that foreword the story of Maury Wills. He says, for years, we used professional, talking first person, Cy Berger, we used professional scouts to go out and scout the players that in organized ball that they thought would reach the major leagues. They scouted Maury Wills, who was really a career minor leaguer until Bobby Bragan got him and made him a switch hitter and all those things. But he wasn't expected to make the major leagues, and they snubbed him at Topps by so doing. And when he did make the major leagues, he wouldn't sign a contract with them. So, point being, I'm reading that, and I'm thinking, well, somebody has to go out now and sign these players to contracts, because Cy Berger said that now our MO is to sign everybody in organized ball, get them under contract. Whether they make it, they don't, we have them all under contract. And I thought to myself, you know what? They're just looking for a guy, a public relations guy, who can talk, who can communicate, who could go out there and meet the players, know the coaches from when I was a kid, and I write Cy Berger a letter. I didn't write it. I didn't write the letter. I had the idea. A woman friend of mine, Elizabeth Beck, what's her name? She writes, puts my feelings into words, tells Cy Berger why me, a baseball card fanatic, a sports fanatic, a baseball fanatic, as a fan, and a great communicator. I was in the insurance business. I could talk. I could do what it takes, and I applied for the job of the West Coast representative. I don't hear from him for about a year, and all of a sudden I get a letter. We'd like you to do this, that, and the other thing. We're sending you information. We're sending you all the contracts, the blank contracts and the checks and the books so you can plan a trip. And I got to be the West Coast Topps representative from 1983 to 1995. And I'd go to the minor leagues, the Northwest League, the California League, and I'd sign and obligate players to the big leagues. And I did that for all those years. And I met a number of people, and I got to interview them over the years. And but it's all because of that. What you brought up, Maury Wills not signing. They weren't going to let that happen again. And to the best of my knowledge, they've pretty much signed all the players coming up over the years, and that's the rest of the story.
Yeah, they did have a couple of slip-ups because there's no 72 or 73 Rusty Staub cards because they've created facsimiles of those because he was not satisfied with the compensation that the union had negotiated.
Oh.
So he held out for a couple of years, and I guess they reached some sort of agreement, and he, was in the sets from 74 through the rest. But when they were having the Bowman Wars with Topps, and the lack of musical cards, the lack of Williams cards for a number of years. The fact that in '55, when the war was really at its peak, there was no cards of Don Mueller, no cards of Larry Doby, and there were certain players, star players, who wound up leaving Bowman and going to Topps and Permanent. When the Bowman came out with the '51 set, that there were a number of star players that were missing that were in the '50 set. They came out in the Redbacks.
There were a number of guys.
You remember the Redbacks and Bluebacks?
Yeah, I have the Redback set.
Yeah, there a lot of Redback sets like Dom DiMaggio, Mel Parnell. There's a bunch of them who were not in the '51 Bowmans, who were in the '50 Bowmans. A lot of them wound up landing in the Topps, the Topps Redbacks.
So how did guys be in both, like in between '53 and '55? Guys that were in both sets.
I guess they had signed contracts, and one or the other didn't want to contest it. I've only found three
players would sign exclusive contracts with Bowman
later on, but basically I found three players that were in all five sets: the '51, '55 Bowman and Topps being the Redbacks and Bluebacks. Yogi, Phil Rizzuto, and one that shocked the hell out of me was the White Sox catcher, Sherman Lawler. They're the only three that were in all. I've been able to find that were in all the sets at that point. But I imagine players like Rizzuto and Berra, they were in such demand when the whole thing started that whoever didn't contest it, that they were contest the original signing.
My first year of collecting was '53. They had the Bowmans and Topps, and the Bowman wrapper had Joe DiMaggio written on all over, like Joe DiMaggio. So when I used to go to the candy store, I go to Joe DiMaggio cards.
He was never on the Topps.
I didn't know they were called Bowman.
Yeah, he was never on the Topps of Bowman. '52 was the first year I started buying them in earnest. I had some '51 Bowmans, so the Topps were the big cards. That's the way I refer to them. The big cards, and the Bowman was the little cards.
Right. Was Bowman the company that had the TV set?
Yeah, that was their last baseball issue.
And I collected them because who had a color TV?
Yeah.
In '55, and you had the umpires in it. Now, what 10-year-old kid wanted to get an umpire?
Well, those are expensive now.
I know, and they all looked alike pretty much.
I know, yeah.
With the hat on,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the only good, you got Lon Warnke in here, who's almost a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Yeah.
But he was an umpire. His umpire card is in there.
Yeah, and also Topps in '54 and '55 had plenty of players who never was, because Bowman had most of the stars at that point.
And one thing too is they never thought about the collecting craze of now with adults collecting, because Hank Aaron batting lefty in '57.
Yeah. They had one card, I think it was in '59, where Lou Burdett he was pitching left-handed.
He was a prankster.
Yeah.
I think one card they had an LOU.
How about Billy Ripken? We won't go into
that card. No, that was a clear card. Yeah. And the Washington and the '59 set had some bonus baby named Lumenti, who never made it, and they put in his picture was put in by on his card. The picture was Camilo Pascual.
Yeah, they got some wrong names.
Yeah.
I remember Gary Pettis had his the Bat Boy pose.
Yeah.
Now Aurelio Rodriguez was a Bat Boy also. One of his cards was the team Bat Boy.
Well, they
had a number of errors, and in the '55 Bowman, the TV set, they had a couple. I think they had the Bowling Brothers backs were switched.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Milt and Frank.
Frank and Milt. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
And Donruss, when they came out in '81, they had a card. This is the most egregious error. The card that was supposed to be Tom Seaver, they had Floyd Bannister.
Wow.
I'm sure they heard a lot about that one. Yeah.
Interesting if they put Zachary in there.
Yeah, Floyd Bannister. This is when Seaver was. It may have been the first. This is when they were both with the White Sox. When Seaver was at the White Sox in '84 or '85.
And very few people know he came back to the Red Sox in '86.
Yeah, he was in the bullpen the whole series that year.
He could have pitched in the World Series if
he couldn't. That was his last year. His knee was damaged. He wasn't. He didn't pitch the last half of the season with them.
Well, they could have put him. They could have put him in instead of Schiraldi.
Yeah, Schiraldi was not exactly one of the better clutch pitchers. And it's funny, with relief pitchers, you either love them or you hate them.
They're in it the key part of the game.
Yeah, well, I hate a couple. I hated Armando Benitez. I absolutely hated, was one who served up the pitcher that served up the 3-run home run to Tim McCarver in the 64 World Series, Pete Mickelson.
Yeah, Mickelson.
Oh, God.
Hamilton was supposed to come in.
Heavy-set glasses. He wore these big Clark Kent glasses.
Yeah, I was at the Pirates were playing a doubleheader with the Giants the last weekend of 1966 because the Friday night game had been rained out. So they played a doubleheader Saturday. And the Pirates have a 1-run lead going to the 8th inning of the first game. And I think the manager, was Harry Walker at the time, takes whoever was pitching out and he brings in Mickelson. And I turned to a kid in back of me who must have been 10 years old at the time. And I said, "Kid, this game is over. They're not going to win this." He says, "How do you know?" I said, "Just watch." And Mickelson, of course, coughed up the runs and lost it.
All right.
Well, after he gave up the home run, Ralph Houk, who was the general manager, asked Hamilton, "Were you ready to come in?"
Yeah.
That was one of the things that Houk used against the Flyer Yogi.
Yeah, I know, because the first time I ever saw Mickelson, Yogi brought him in an early season game at Baltimore. The Yankees had a 7-2 lead. They brought him into the 9th inning, and they gave up 7 runs, and they were losing the game.
Hey, guys, good show. Excellent. Much fun. We're going to do it on a regular basis, St. Louis Cardinal baseball, past, present, future, and I promise you we will continue to have the discussion go free for all like this. Most fun I have is just talking ball, and this is a great network for it. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho. Gene Hutmaker is the host. And Alan Blumpkin is the Sabre superstar and our expert on most everything. Thanks for being here,
not
gentlemen.
Quite.
Well, not quite, but
yeah.
On most things. On most
things, baseball, and I got news for you out there. On most things, life. So, and I'm happy to have you both on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. If you're listening out there, thank you, and keep on keeping on. Thanks, gentlemen. It was fun.
Yes, it was. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay.
Well.
Okay. Ralph, I'll let you know if there's any change on the Nemec thing tomorrow.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.